risking some potentially serious political consequences, an increasing number of elected Republicans are publicly complaining about how their party's leaders are tanking a bipartisan border deal in order to campaign on immigration and benefit Donald Trump politically. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to play in this video, and much of this you already know, at least in terms of the predicate, which is, again, right now, immigration is a major wedge issue here in the United States. Recent polling suggests it's the most important issue to Americans, whether that's right or wrong. And also, Republicans enjoy a colossal polling advantage on immigration. And so Republicans who are trying to take back the White House, maintain the House of Representatives, take back the Senate, and try to form a unified control of government, they need this issue as much as possible politically, which is inconvenient for them because they had previously authorized a good faith, allegedly, bipartisan negotiation of a border deal in the Senate. So now these two mutually exclusive options are in a head-to-head collision. And it's made worse by the fact that the leader, the cult leader of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, is publicly pressuring and privately pressuring Republican leaders in the House and the Senate to kill this deal. So it hurts Biden politically. It doesn't give President Biden a win on which to campaign. It's all super cynical. Got some clips that I want to play to really emphasize this. Mitch McConnell, who is the Republican leader in the Senate, who helped authorize, again, the good faith bipartisan immigration/border/Ukraine funding bill. Now that he's started to waffle because of pressure from Trump, he's confronted about it by the media, CNN in particular.
How do you think how do you think voters would look at Republicans if the GOP were to kill a bipartisan deal that you cut with the White House because of Donald Trump's opposition?
Well, I think I'm going to continue not to comment on the presidential campaign. Obviously, this is an incredibly challenging political discussion we've been having.
An incredibly challenging political discussion. You can see from McConnell's visible discomfort, I mean, he has no good answer for this, right? And he says he's not going to comment on the presidential campaign. If it makes you feel any better, or if it makes Mitch feel any better, his counterpart in the House of Representatives, Speaker Mike Johnson, doesn't have a much better answer at all either.
The former president has made it clear that he doesn't want you guys to move forward on this, and judging by his comments, he clearly wants to campaign on this issue. Have you spoken to him about the Senate proposal, and are you simply trying to kill this to help him out in the campaign?
No, Manu, that's absurd. We have a responsibility here to do our duty. Our duty is to do right by the American people, to protect the people. The first and most important job of the federal government is to protect its citizens. We're not doing that under President Biden. We have only a tiny, as you know, razor thin, actually a one-vote majority right now in the House. Our majority is small. We only have it in one chamber, but we're trying to use every ounce of leverage that we have to make sure that this issue is addressed. I have talked to former President Trump about this issue at length. And
we know. It's been reported. You've talked about it at length with him because he needs this issue to try to get a leg up on President Biden in the election. And if this is such an emergency, if this is such a national emergency, and you are worried about the health of the American people and the safety of the American people, then you should probably at least entertain the bipartisan deal coming out of the Senate, which again is extremely rare, especially when you consider that the guy negotiating it is a guy by the name of Lankford, who is an ultra-conservative Republican senator. This guy is no moderate with respect to the border, and the fact that he is leading the Republican delegation for the border bill should say a lot and should offer a lot of credibility if you're really interested in the substance. And Lankford is not pleased. Again, this is a guy who doesn't want Biden to be president. He doesn't want Democrats to be in control of the Senate. But he's also a guy who's furious at the prospect that this deal that he's negotiated ostensibly in good faith is in serious jeopardy, as he conveys to Shannon Bream on Fox News.
That are not being enforced. So why give him this in an election year, the cover of this deal that, you know, critics say is still going to let a lot of people in, but he gets to take a victory lap that he's gotten something done.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not going to let a bunch of people in. It's focused on actually turning people around on it. It is interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. So we actually locked arms together and said, we're not going to give you money for this. We want a change in law. And now it's interesting, a few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year. We all have an oath to the Constitution, and we have a commitment to say we're going to do whatever we can to be able to secure the border. Just as a quick, for instance,
So there you go. Again, even James Langford, again, a guy who wants Biden to lose, wants Democrats to lose. And he even recognized, he undercuts. What's funny is Langford, his statement there to Fox News undercuts what we heard from Mitch McConnell at the beginning of this video, which is like, and from Mike Johnson as well, this idea that the reason that Republicans are starting to back away from this bill isn't because of Trump's pressure. It clearly is. That's exactly what Langford says. It's kind of ridiculous that this is the reason that this is now happening. So they're constantly tripping over each other. So the reporting that Donald Trump is pressuring the Republicans, and that's the primary reason they're starting to pull away from this deal, that is clearly the case. And again, Langford and others start to complain about it to the press, you know, at least undercutting the position of their current leaders.
The former president calls this a betrayal. Is that what do you think of that characterization?
It's certainly not a betrayal. Actually, we've got to be able to deal with issues in law. That's how we actually deal with things in America.
Does he have access to the bill?
Doesn't seem that way.
It hasn't been released. How does he know it's a betrayal if he hasn't read it? I mean, don't be ignorant. Read the bill.
The problem, of course, is Donald Trump probably can't read, period, and certainly has no interest in reading a bill. So this is, again, James Langford, Bill Cassidy, two outspoken Republicans who are not particularly moderate, and they think this is absolutely bonkers from Republicans to do. There's also Tom Tillis.
It is immoral for me to think you look the other way because you think this is the linchpin for President Trump to win. I do not want to be a part of history that fails democracy, and that's a failure if we don't find a way to fund Ukraine and Israel.
Again, all of these things reaffirm the fact that despite what Johnson and Mitch McConnell say, the only reason this is happening is because of external pressure from Trump. Then you have other members of the House of Representatives, like, and I'm blanking on his name, Dan Crenshaw, right? Again, a Republican from Texas, a member of the House of Representatives, somebody who's quite hawkish on the border. He thinks it's absurd as well.
The height of stupidity is having a strong opinion on something you know nothing about. I'm extremely disappointed in the very strange maneuvering by many on the right to torpedo a potential border reform bill. If we have a bill that, on net, significantly decreases illegal immigration, and we sabotage that, that is inconsistent with what we told our voters we would do. People will make up whatever reasons they want to. There's a number of them, I'm sure. But it would be a pretty unacceptable dereliction of your duty.
That is, if you understand that your duty is to serve the people and to govern in good faith and not simply to pull political stunts in order to win elections. Now, Crenshaw is right that to do what Republicans are doing is inconsistent with their publicly stated principles. Of course, we know elected Republicans don't really live by their publicly stated principles, so it's quite consistent with their behavior and their history. So in 2013, when President Obama had just won re-election and Republicans controlled the House, there was, led by Marco Rubio, Republican Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio in the Senate, a bipartisan sweeping immigration and border bill that he helped co-author and sponsor. And it made it through the Senate. And it died in the House of Representatives because Paul Ryan, you know, the man who ran for vice president against Joe Biden in the Romney-Obama 2012 election, he persuaded then Speaker of the House, Republican John Boehner, to kill the bill so that Republicans could use immigration as a wedge issue in the next election. So this is consistent with how the Republican operates, which is consistently and uniquely in bad faith. The other thing I want to point out is David Beyer, and this is somebody I've referenced quite a bit. This is a man who works for the Cato Institute, a right-wing think tank, okay? A right-wing think tank. He has been torching Republicans on this because he says that the Republican arguments with respect to immigration now are just replete with lies. So just to put this in perspective, he said, House Oversight Republicans repeatedly suggest that all Biden needed to do was reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. forgetting that Biden did reinstate it in fiscal year 2022 at a level that far exceeded what it was when Trump left office, or even early 2020. It did not work. This guy is a border expert, a southern border expert. He says it didn't work. House Oversight Republicans repeatedly claimed that Democrats were only interested in fixing immigration to benefit their election outcomes, even though congressional Republicans have performed far better during high immigration periods. And he has the data to prove it, okay? And I'll throw this one here because I hear this a lot too. They kept claiming that it will give more seats to Democrats. This is wrong too. Since 1990, illegal immigration has actually given more seats to Republican states. So they are just constantly operating on bad information and false claims. But you know what's interesting too? Republicans are being censured, not censored, censured by their own party for these bipartisan border talks. So James Langford is a senator from Oklahoma. Again, he's the co-author of this bipartisan immigration bill. They have voted. The Oklahoma Republican Party has voted to censure him, to condemn him for his role in the bipartisan border talks. So think about that. Republicans constantly complain about the state of the southern border and the lack of meaningful executive or legislative action at the southern border. And here you have an ultra-conservative, hawkish person on immigration negotiating in good faith a bill that could pass. And they're censuring him for it because it's substantively correct with regard to their values, but politically inexpedient with respect to getting Donald Trump reelected. That's where we are. And that's nothing new because you may not remember, the Republican Party formally censured Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, two lifelong conservatives. Adam Kinzinger is a veteran. Republicans supposedly care about veterans. That's what they tell us. Obviously, it's not the case. Liz Cheney is the daughter of Dick Cheney, the Darth Vader of Republican politics. She voted with Trump 93% of the time when she was a congressperson. But they censured Kinzinger and Cheney because they participated in the House January 6th Select Committee. This Republican Party offers no room for good faith cooperation with the Democrats or criticism in any way, shape, or form of Donald Trump. That's where we are. There is no good faith path ahead with the Republican Party. They're simply not a good faith partner, certainly not nearly as reliable as Democrats have been to Republicans. There's a complete asymmetry here. The important thing is for President Biden, the Democrats, and quite frankly, you and I and the mainstream media, all of us, to call this for what it is. Even if you're conservative on the border and you think that there need to be more conservative policies adopted, whatever, we can disagree on that. But what we should have consensus on is that there's no excuse, there's no moral justification to tank a bipartisan deal negotiated by an ultra-conservative immigration hawk, that you worked on for months, you authorized for months, simply because it's politically inconvenient for Donald Trump. Because then what that conclusively proves, is that you don't care about solving problems. You care about exploiting problems for political benefit. And that's why I have said from the beginning and continue to say, nobody anywhere in a red state or a blue state, no matter what your position is, nobody, if you're an eligible voter, should be voting for a Republican in 2024. They're not good faith actors. They have no interest in solving problems that are important to you. All they care is about winning elections. And to do that, they think they need issues to continue to exploit, not problems to solve. Let me know what you think in the comments.